morning, good afternoon, good evening. There are reports that the Zanu PF and its sidekick, opposition councillors, are demolishing houses in Mavuku. This is a nightmare, and it has been going on ever since the country's independence and before it. Zanu PF is deliberately denying people ownership of the land. Some of these people would have built those houses because they got the land from the so-called land barons. These are individuals with powerful political connections. They get the money, they walk away. And then somebody comes along and says, oh, no, you shouldn't have been given that land. And their houses are then destroyed. Some of them would have been staying in those houses for the last 20 years. This is just constant political harassment. It is a pity that after independence, 45 years after independence, we still haven't resolved the issue of land ownership, of giving people title deeds to even a postage stamp-sized land on which their homes are built, particularly those in the rural areas. It has often been said that the land issue was at the heart of the struggle for independence. That is very true. People have got to realize that for the majority of ordinary Zimbabweans in the rural areas, ownership of the land is the only right that means something to them. And if people were given ownership of the land, that is the most significant economic empowerment. The white colonial rulers did not want to give people title deeds to land because they reasoned that the next thing they would want is political rights. And so the regime deliberately kept them economically disempowered. Ironically, after independence, Mugabe and his cronies decided to do the same thing themselves for their own political benefit. I've often played this video clip of Margaret Dongo, herself a freedom fighter, a Zanu PF MP, and then she became an independent MP. And for some time, she led her own opposition party. Here she is speaking about why the Zanu PF considers the rural areas its stronghold.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite, and and the so-called investors. Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for Zanu PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. Because at the moment, if you economic empower these people, they'll go out of hand. Zanu PF will never have control over them.
One of the greatest ironies is that whilst the Zanu PF ruling elite have given themselves vast tracts of land, farms, and given themselves title deeds to those vast tracts of land, they've stubbornly refused to give the rural people even title deeds to the yard on which their mud hut is built. For political reasons. Simple as that. They don't want the people to own anything. They don't want them to have the confidence that this is my home, my land, I can develop it and use it as an asset. They don't want that. They want to deliberately keep the raw people poor and dependent on Zanu PF. One of the great heroes of Zimbabwe's land issue was Chief Rekayi Tangwena. Here is a short video clip about him.
Independence. Rekayi Tangwena's name is often mentioned. The chief of the Tangwena people of Nyanga is a symbol of resistance to Zimbabweans and Africans alike. Following Rhodesia's Land Apportionment Act, most Africans were driven out from their ancestral lands to less productive areas, known as the reserves. Chief Tangwena and his people, on the other hand, refused to leave their land in the Gayaresi area of Nyanga. He argued that land was God-given and sanctified by ancestral occupation and heritage. Rekayi Tangwena's rift with the Rhodesian authorities started as soon as he was made chief. He went to the district office to inform the native commissioner that he was now the chief of the Tangwena people, but he was informed that it was not possible since the Tangwena people were, according to Smith's government, squatters on a farm owned by William Hanmer. On several occasions, Tangwena refused to be evicted from his ancestral lands, even in light of an eviction order from the Ministry of Home Affairs. Despite the Rhodesian government losing in court to Chief Tangwena and his people, the authorities later resorted to using force to get him out of his land. It was on September 18, 1969, that the Tangwena people were evicted from the land in a violent manner, in which some of the Tangwena people were beaten up by the Rhodesian police. Rekayi Tangwena also led demonstrations against the colonial authorities at Nyanga police station, despite the brutality that had earlier been exhibited by the police when they evicted his people from their land. However, Tangwena is most celebrated for his role in helping the liberation heroes such as the late Robert Mugabe and Edgar Tekere to cross into Mozambique.
The tragedy is the country has gained its independence in 1980, and nothing has changed. the same oppressive laws that the whites had imposed, creating these tribal trustlands, communal areas, and denying the blacks ownership to even a postage-sized piece of land, have remained. Zanu PF is able to harass people to this day on the basis that wherever they are, they don't own the land. I think it's high time the people in the rural areas wake up to that reality. And the ordinary Zimbabweans, wherever they are, they too should wake up to that reality. It is common practice that many people in Zimbabwe today, if they want to build a house, a decent home for themselves or for their relatives, they go to urban centers because they, at least there, they can get title deeds to a piece of land and build on it. In the rural homes, there's no such thing. The urban centers have become squalors, overcrowded, with no basic services. There's no running water in many urban centers now. The sewage system has long since broken down. And yet, the council rates have remained sky high. It is common to find councils enforcing payments of council rates as much as $200 a month, and yet they provide no services. And people have still continued to choose to settle in urban centers, purely because at least there they've got title deeds to the land. I think people should wake up to the reality that they can build themselves a decent home, just like in the urban centers now. They've got to dig their own well. They've got to make sure that they've got a working sewage system themselves. At least if they are in the rural areas, they don't have to pay exorbitant council rates for no services. I don't see why anyone should be denied the right to own the yard on which they build their homestead. I argue that people should look at it and demand that as a birthright, just like Chief Tangwena did. It's not a favor, it's a birthright. I believe people must go ahead and build a decent homestead in their rural home. Develop the yard, grow fruit trees, and claim it as part and parcel of their inheritance. Even if Zanu PF continues to refuse to give them title deeds, they should claim the title deeds themselves and call these the chief Rekayi Tangwena title deed, birthright. Many people in the urban centers should also be aware that as long as Zanu PF is able to deny millions of people in the rural areas title deeds and economically empower them so that they remain politically dependent on the regime and its proxies, Zimbabwe can never become a truly healthy and functioning democracy. As Margaret Longo explained there, Zanu PF coerces the rural people and is keeping them deliberately poor. So the party can continue to say the rural areas are its political stronghold. The people of Zimbabwe in the rural areas have got as much right to have a meaningful say on who governs the country as those in the urban centers. The fight to give the people in the rural areas title deeds is not the fight for only those in the rural areas. It is a fight for all Zimbabweans. I believe it is high time the people of Zimbabwe stood up to this regime, just as Chief Rekayi Tangwena stood up to the Smith regime, to the white colonial regime, and refused to be treated as a third-class citizen in their own land. Chief Tangwena was being told where he was living, where he had lived, where his ancestors had lived for generations, that he was a squatter. The irony of it is unbelievable. Here is a group of people who have lived on a piece of land for generations. And a foreigner comes and says, move from there. This is not their land. This is not their country. You're a foreigner. And yet you've got the audacity to tell those people who lived there for generations that they must move. When they refuse to move, you call them squatters. Zimbabweans cannot accept a situation where 70% plus of the population in the rural areas are denied ownership to the land. Zanu PF wants to maintain this system of tribal trust land, communal areas, where no one owns anything. It's held in trust. Mnangagwa wants to call it the presidential land. The land belongs to the president. He owns all the land. Why? I repeat, the people of Zimbabwe in the rural areas should build themselves a decent homestead, invest as much as they can to improving that piece of land, the homestead and the yard, and claim it as their own. They are entitled to own land in Zimbabwe. Zanu PF is denying them that right for selfish political reasons. That cannot be acceptable. Enough is enough. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.